Hey, Mike with Nerd Problems Gaming here, the channel where we go through the good and bad of everything nerdy to make sure you spend your time on the best of the best. In today's video, I'll be doing a review of Kingdom Hearts Final Mix. Is it worth it? Does it still hold up? So let's get into it. So the original Kingdom Hearts game came out on the PlayStation 2 way back in 2002. So it's hard to believe, but it's a little over 18 years ago that this game came out. And so it's been quite a while since I've played it, but I recently picked up Kingdom Hearts 3 and realized I barely remember the storyline at all for Kingdom Hearts. So I really wanted to go back through and play through all the original games to really get a full grasp of the story before I jumped into the third game. And so it was actually pretty cool. Recently, they came out with this Kingdom Hearts, the Story So Far game, and it's really a compilation that includes basically every game up to Kingdom Hearts 3. Now, a couple of the games, they actually just did like a video recap of them, but for the most part, most of the games are included in this compilation. And so going back through playing the original Kingdom Hearts game on this remastered HD version was pretty cool. Now, the storyline follows Sora, Riku, and Kairi, and they are on this small remote island, and they're really just kind of searching for a bigger world, a bigger perspective than their little slice of what they have. And what they find out is that there's actually other worlds that they can travel to. And so they actually find out as well that the darkness is going around and consuming different worlds and destroying them. And so you basically embark on this mission as Sora to travel across these different worlds and being able to cut off the darkness and seal that to basically keep the worlds alive. And so you actually team up with Goofy and Donald Duck, basically that are charged from King Mickey to protect the realm and protect all the different worlds. And you are like this Keyblade master, and that basically holds the key to locking these keyholes and doors on these various worlds to keep out the darkness. And so it's kind of the general plot of the story as you go through saving these different worlds. You're tasked with that, and then kind of reuniting with your friends as your original home world kind of gets destroyed or overcome by darkness. And so the game itself is an action RPG, and then it also is a pretty cool concept where it combines the Final Fantasy series with Disney characters. And so for me, I was definitely nostalgic on both of those when this originally came out. So that was really cool getting to see that combination. Another cool thing is that they took a lot of the characters from Final Fantasy VIII, Final Fantasy VII, and Final Fantasy X, and then brought them in to this Disney world. And so what's awesome too is that originally, a lot of these games were on PlayStation 1. Now, 10 was on 2, so the graphics were a little bit better at that point, but 7 and 8 were from PlayStation, so the graphics were pretty terrible on that system. So I know for me, one of the huge appeals, not only being nostalgic for Final Fantasy, but also getting to see these characters rebuilt in these 3D models was really awesome. And then also getting to play these Disney World characters, their various home worlds. So you've got like Agrabah from Aladdin, you've got the Atlantis and the Little Mermaid, Halloween Town from The Nightmare Before Christmas, right? And many more. And so you're getting to explore these worlds in a video game fashion was really cool. And you also basically transform in some of the worlds when you go there. So your costume might change, how you look. So for example, in Halloween Town, you're dressed up in all these Halloween costumes. So again, it's just really cool immersing yourself in that world. Now, looking back and playing the game now, there's certainly some aspects that were a little bit frustrating. One thing for sure that I need to mention is that when you turn this game on for the first time, it asks you to adjust the brightness. Whatever you do, make sure that you turn it as high as possible. It might not seem like it's a big deal when you're on that little screen, but it makes a huge impact, especially in this first game. I know a lot of the puzzles as you go through, there's going to be certain doorways, and even Halloween Town in general, you can barely see anything on the screen, and it's really hard to play. And I know I spent maybe hours trying to find and get past different areas because I simply couldn't see the door I was supposed to go into. I know in the Cave of Wonder in Aladdin's town as well, that was really hard to see certain aspects of it. I know I got lost for a while just going in circles simply because the brightness wasn't high enough to actually see what was going on. So I think this is notorious for that. So make sure whatever you do, turn the brightness up all the way so you can actually play the game. But that's just really a frustrating aspect of it as well. Another thing that I noticed kind of going back through and playing this game the second time is that even with some of the story elements, it's kind of vague at points. So you kind of get lost and it gets repetitive in a sense where you're just going back through kind of in circles in the world, just trying to find that next cutscene that's going to happen. So, some of the puzzles are very vague and difficult to figure out. And a lot of them required actually looking up, again, going back through and playing this for the second time, 18 years later. Another aspect that I like about this game is that it's basically open world to some extent, where you can choose various different locations and worlds that you want to visit, and you don't necessarily need to do them in the same order. Another aspect along with this is you have a gummy ship, which is kind of weird, but it's almost like a third-person flight simulator shooter that you go through in between worlds. And so that's a different change of pace. Those were fun, but the one thing that I really hate about this game is that when you have the ability to design and upgrade your gummy ship, the control aspect of doing this is so complex and counterintuitive, and it takes forever to learn, and it's not really worth it. You just kind of feel like you're wasting a ton of time trying to figure this out and wish that the user interface was just better. So that was one big letdown, I think, in the game. It was a cool concept to try out and have thrown into the game to kind of switch things up, but I don't think it was executed very well. And even in the remastered version, I think it was a terrible job on how to do it. So I think they just needed more intuitive controls on this part to make this aspect of customizing your gummy ship actually fun. Now, some things that I really like, the combat is super fast paced as you play this game. One thing that's cool as well is that you've got basically yourself, Sora, that you're playing as, Donald and Goofy that tag along. Now, Donald Duck is basically like your mage, and then Goofy is kind of like a knight and protector and defender as you play as. But also, as you go to different worlds, you can play in some of them as the main character in that story arc. So you might be having like Ariel on your team, or Aladdin, or the Beast from Beauty and the Beast, right? So there's different things that you can have as you go and play through using those various characters on your team. So that's pretty cool to be able to do that as well. And as you play as well, when you start the game, you basically have a choice to kind of customize how you want your character to be. So there's like a shield, a sword, and a staff. And depending on what you want to emphasize and what you want to basically sacrifice, it's going to affect how you level up in the game, what order you're unlocking abilities. And so that's pretty cool too. So it really adds to the replay value as you go back through and play the game. Now, when I played through recently, I played basically on the Final Cut version, and that's kind of like the normal mode. And to be honest, it really wasn't that challenging at all as you play through. The only thing that really gave me any sort of a challenge was playing through in the Colosseum, kind of like Hercules' world. And so there is like a kind of series where you're playing 50 matches in a row, for example. And then there's also some hidden special bosses as you get further into the game that are kind of optional. Those proved to be a challenge as well, but that was really the only part of the game that was actually hard. Other than that, the game itself was pretty easy to play through on normal mode. So again, I didn't know how necessarily challenging it would be on basically, I think it's called the proud mode or the hard difficulty, but the normal mode was very easy. So if you want a challenge, I would highly recommend playing on the most difficult setting. Otherwise, the only real challenge you're going to face in the game is these optional bosses that can be very difficult. Another thing that's cool too is that in the Colosseum, you have the opportunity to fight like Cloud and Squall, and then even Sephiroth as well from Final Fantasy VII. And that is pretty much impossible to beat that guy. I went many times attempting to defeat him on level 100, which is the max level, and even that was nearly impossible to do. So there is some challenging aspects to the game, but you kind of have to seek those out to actually find them. Also, as you go through the different worlds, you're going to follow pretty much the basic storyline of these movies or of these adaptations in the Disney world, but they're just a little bit changed to fit the storyline that you're going through with Sora and Donald and Goofy trying to get rid of the Heartless and the darkness on these various worlds. But for the most part, it still kind of follows the general plot that you would find in these Disney movies. So it might have been cool to kind of explore different stories completely. But again, that might be coming more down the road in the later Kingdom Hearts games where you're in these worlds, but it's not necessarily by the playbook as the movies and original content was. What's also neat is a lot of the bosses are going to be the major villains that you find in the movies and, these various IPs of Disney as well. So that's fun to be able to take on the villains and fight them in their specific world and environment, and to create some unique battles as well. Another thing too is that there's like a synthesis shop in the game, and this part was a little bit frustrating. Normally I really like that aspect in RPGs, but in this game, a lot of the things that you need to synthesize or can synthesize are almost impossible to create. I remember recently playing for hours trying to get various items to be able to create these synthesis items, but by that time I had already maxed out my level just simply trying to get the items required to make some of these high-end things in the synthesis shop. So I never even bothered to make them. It's like I'm not going to play another 3 or 4 hours just to try and get the items to create these when I've already maxed out my level and beat everything else in the game. So that was a little bit frustrating. They probably should have made that a little bit simpler to collect those items in the game to make that a little bit more fun to create those unique synthesized items. But overall, I really enjoyed this game. It was a lot of fun going back and playing through again for the second time, 18 years later, and playing this remixed HD version. Like I said, overall though, it's a little bit easy. So if you want a challenge playing this game, as well as the enjoyment that goes with it, I would recommend playing on the harder settings. But if you're not used to playing action RPGs, certainly play on normal mode. And I think playing on easy would be borderline ridiculous. So unless you're brand new to video games and maybe you're on the younger side, I would stay away from the easy and normal mode. And if you want a real challenge, give the hard mode a try. But let me know in the comments below, do you guys like this remix version of the game? Do you like the original game that came out on PlayStation 2? What's your favorite? Do you like this spin on it, the HD remasters? Let me know in the comments below. And then again, guys, if you like this video, be sure to smash that like button and be sure to turn on those bell notifications and subscribe to the channel as well to get the latest updates of new nerd videos we put out here. And if you'd like to help us support the channel, pick out content and more, consider becoming a patron of ours over at nerdproblemsgaming.com/Patreon. And if you'd like to plug into our live streams and Let's Plays we do on the channel as well, you can follow us over at nerdproblemsgaming.com/Twitch. But once again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you more soon.